go ahead and get started. So I'm Lauren Kwan. I lead marketing at Plus. And today with me, we have on stage CJ, who is the Christian John, known as CJ, who is the president at Tier 4 North America. And my colleague, Shawn Kerrigan, who is the COO and Co-Founder at Plus. And we're here to dive a little deeper into autonomous trucks for the Japan market. We announced recently a partnership between Plus and Tier 4 to bring autonomous trucks to Japan. So wanted to dive a little bit deeper, get into the whys and what the opportunities are. So I think with that, I'm going to maybe just kick it off as a broad question. Obviously, I think in the autonomous space, in the trucking, as well as just overall passenger vehicles, there's a lot more discussion about partnerships. Why in particular did Tier 4 and Plus decide to get into a partnership and do this together?
So from our perspective, Tier 4, we're a company based in Japan. We're doing a lot of work in developing autonomy solutions for the Japanese market. We've trialed robo-taxis, buses. We've developed relationships with the OEMs in the Japanese market. We understand the regulatory environment and the process. Trucking is a new space for us to adapt, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to work with a partner that has already developed solutions, applied that to heavy-duty commercial vehicles such as trucks, and Plus was an obvious candidate for us to reach out to and partner with. Having developed the latest end-to-end AI, AV 2.0 type technology for trucking, it was a logical fit for us to look at how to integrate their technology with the solutions that we've developed for the Japan market.
Yeah, so Plus is an autonomous technology developer, is working to develop a solution that can be applied globally, right? That can react like a human, adapt to different conditions worldwide. And as we go into any given market, we look for strong partners that have strong local capabilities and relationships. And so in that context, we found that Tier 4 was a great partner with deep relationships throughout Japan. And we thought that together we would be very well positioned to deliver this technology into the Japanese market.
Let's talk a little bit about Japan. I think not everyone in the audience knows necessarily. A lot of us probably have visited Japan. We may have visited during cherry blossom season, like right about now, know about the food, the culture, but in terms of actually the CV market, the commercial vehicle market in Japan, what is driving the need for driverless trucks in Japan?
Yeah, so what we have in Japan is what we call the Logistics 2024 problem, which is in 2024, the government established regulations which limit the maximum hours of overtime that drivers can be behind the wheel. This translates now to a significant driver shortage. You have the aging population of the drivers, coupled with increased demand for transportation services as well. You're seeing the trend in the Japanese market also move towards home delivery of goods and services, which again is putting an increased demand on commercial vehicle drivers. So by all accounts, our estimates show that by 2030, if these trends continue, there's going to be approximately a 35% gap in the number of available drivers to the demand. So this is one of the reasons that the government is really investing now in technologies that are starting to look at addressing these problems of driver shortages, particularly in commercial applications such as trucking or autonomous buses, transportation solutions.
That sounds pretty reminiscent of other driver shortages, something that we hear about a lot. We talk about that a lot here in the US, in Europe. Shawn, in terms of the overall context, in terms of what CJ is describing there, how was that part of the consideration of, going into Japan, which is a new market for Plus?
Definitely. We think that the benefits of autonomous driving in terms of addressing a global driver shortage, that seems to be a fairly global phenomenon across all the countries where we operated, as well as the benefits in terms of increasing efficiency and increasing sustainability are really global trends that can benefit from this technology. And so this is something we've seen is both applicable to a lot of different markets. And then also we find that based on our approach of trying to build a generalized virtual driver, having more experience in more markets all feeds back into building a more robust, more capable system overall.
Yeah, I think then as you're describing, CJ, too, in terms of the recognition of the population, in terms of aging, all of that, I think the Japanese market has done a lot of different things to really try to stem the issue and address some of these shortages that are coming up. But I think Japan, in some of what I've read is actually quite forward in being involved at the government level to promote autonomous trucking. So, talk to us a little bit more about what that regulatory environment looks like, how maybe you guys have also been involved in some of this discussion and initial work with the Japanese government to really move this forward.
Yeah, so this issue of aging population is behind one of the major initiatives in Japan called Mobility DX, or Mobility Digital Transformation. And under that platform, there are three major initiatives related to autonomous technology. One is robo-taxis. Similarly, the taxi drivers are retiring. There's no new taxis drivers coming into the population. So by 2030, there's going to be a significant gap there. We're seeing the same thing in autonomous busing. You have an aging population throughout Japan, particularly in suburban, rural communities where they rely on bus services. And again, there's a significant gap in the future in bus drivers. And then lastly, as we've mentioned, trucking. So these three initiatives are all part of the Mobility DX government-funded program to advance the technologies that will lead to commercial deployment of autonomous technology and mobility solutions. The ones that are really ramping commercially now are starting with the buses. There's an immediate need in rural Japan to provide those types of services. And then trucking and taxis are expected to start ramp up over the next couple of years.
I was just reading that, I think, was it yesterday that you, Tier 4, announced that you guys have finished the initial phase of this project with METI. What does that mean in terms of what was in phase 1 and what is going to be involved in the coming phases?
So the first phase of the project was really around preparing the platform for deployment and testing of the autonomous technologies. So working with the local OEMs, Isuzu, Fuso, much like what was described initially around the work that you've done with International around drive-by-wire integration, the integration of the AD technology with the base vehicle platform, integration of the sensors into the vehicle. That was kind of the scope of the first phase. We did some closed track testing of the autonomy functionality in those vehicles to confirm the performance of the system, and then started to do some manual driving of those systems on the intended routes for data collection, and started to do simulation and analysis of how the system will be expected to perform.
Okay. So OEM relationships is something that we talk a lot about at Plus as well. I think here at the booth, for example, we see the videos of some of the work that we're doing with Iveco, with Hyundai, with Traton Group. Shawn, can you talk a little bit more about why this partnership with OEMs is so important?
Yeah, so we think partnership with OEMs is absolutely critical for deploying this technology at scale. I mean, a lot of it comes back to the notion that these trucks are designed for about 1 million mile design lifespan. And so there's a big difference between retrofitting something onto a truck and designing it into the truck to operate safely and reliably for 1 million miles. So that combined with a lot of their areas of expertise in terms of being able to scalably build trucks in volume. It's one thing to build, a few trucks or tens or 100 trucks. It's another thing to build them at scale from a factory, again, reliably and safely. And so we think that it's absolutely critical to work within the existing value chain and deliver this technology to OEMs to deliver to their customers, the fleets, such that we can deploy autonomous trucks at scale.
In terms of, one of the reasons to work and partner with Plus is our AI first AV 2.0 approach. Can you talk a little bit more about, in terms of taking the virtual driver that's been developed for Europe and US and taking that to Japan? What does that process look like? How do you adapt something to a new market that then you have to then do commercial deployment in?
Yeah, so that's one of the great benefits of an AV 2.0 approach, where you're really building from data and using that to train large neural networks, because it gives you a very principled and structured way to continue to adapt to new environments, which is you need to capture more data from those scenarios and those environments to be able to tune the system to operate there. But it all ties back to this idea that as you gather more and more data, you'll have a more general and more flexible system. And that there's a big difference between that and sort of AV 1.0, the approach, more classical robotics approach, which was very focused on sort of hand-tuned algorithms in code. And under that approach, it was generally very brittle if you encountered things that were outside of the data set that you had really tuned those algorithms around. And so it's almost the difference between what you see from many people out there have seen in terms of chatbots they might have worked with years ago, sort of the different voice assistants, versus more modern ChatGPT type capabilities. That's really the difference between hand-tuned algorithms and large neural networks trained large data sets.
Back a little bit to, in terms of the development that's already happening in Japan on autonomous trucks, there's an autonomous trucking lane on the Shintome Expressway. What is the reason for having that? What is their plan to connect it to other parts of Japan as well? Are there going to be more lanes? What is that development plan?
Yeah, so the rationale behind the Shintome Expressway as the location for the initial deployment of autonomous trucking is, first of all, that particular route, about 100 kilometers, is built with the latest sort of infrastructure technology. So it's built with the latest capabilities around roadside units, sensors, B2X technology, advanced sort of safety design built into the roadways. So that was one of the reasons why. Secondly, or probably more importantly, this particular route is one of the most important logistics routes in Japan for transport of goods from east to west and vice versa. And then the third reason was that the route actually in the evenings is fairly unoccupied. So it's actually a pretty good location to do testing of new technologies. So the idea would be that in the evening hours, there's not a lot of passenger vehicles. It's more commercial vehicles. You can do a lot of testing of these autonomous trucks on that particular route.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Shawn, I think as CJ is describing the smart infrastructure, Plus has had experience operating autonomous trucks with on smart infrastructure. What benefits do you see in terms of operating in that kind of environment with an autonomous truck? And does an autonomous truck need the smart infrastructure in order to operate?
So the autonomous truck needs to be able to operate with whatever infrastructure is in place. And so most places do not have smart infrastructure available. However, in places where it is available, it can further improve the overall efficiency and operating capabilities. And that's because if you have the smart infrastructure that can warn you of things like upcoming road construction or road accidents or things of that nature, it improves both in terms of how you may do some of your routing for efficiency. It also can improve under what ODD or operational design domain constraints you can operate. So all of these systems are constrained under certain weather conditions and other optimal operating conditions. And when you have smart infrastructure there to support your operations, you can actually expand the ODD in some ways. And so I think that the smart infrastructure is really exciting development and something that we've worked with before and are very excited about. So it's not a requirement, but it certainly has significant benefits to the deployment.
As you described that, it reminds me of traveling to Asia, Hong Kong, Japan, places where when you're waiting for the train, you can see like exactly in how many minutes the train is going to come. And that then allows you to also just I think mentally prepare for like, okay, I'm going to wait for another 2 minutes or whatever the case might be. Whereas in the US, when I've been, in the train station in Boston and different places, you stand there and you just go, well, okay, when is it going to come? I have no idea. And so I think, both mentally as well as just, as you were talking about logistics planning, I think being able to have the smart infrastructure give you the information about what the speed that other trucks are traveling at or other vehicles. If there's an accident ahead, I can just see both. I mean, even for drivers who actually have that already, can see that that's already a great load, kind of off your mental load of like thinking ahead. And then for a vehicle to have that, I think definitely for sure the logistics side of making it easier. That's fantastic. Tier 4 CJ, I know, is involved and has done a lot of work helping to determine the certifications and safety guidelines needed for autonomous vehicle development in Japan. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? Because as we talk about deploying autonomous trucks, the question often comes up, well, how do you know it's safe enough? Does a autonomous vehicle get a driver's license or an equivalent to a human driver's license? How are you guys working on that and thinking about that in terms of the Japan rollout?
Yeah, so Tier 4 is actually the first company to achieve a level 4 certification in Japan. We worked very close with the government in establishing the regulatory framework for autonomous vehicle certification. The structure is not so much unlike what you see here, where you have kind of two levels. First, at a federal or nationwide level, there's the certification of the vehicle that you have to do, which is really looking at the specific implementation of a vehicle, the redundancy, the drive-by-wire integration, all the technical specifications of the autonomous vehicle is the first step you have to go through. The second step goes more into the regional, state, prefecture kind of level, where you now have to get into the very specific deployment scenarios of the operational design domain of the vehicle. So now you really have to get very detailed about the operating conditions, the test conditions that the vehicle is going to be evaluated against. And that's really the driver's license level test then of the autonomous vehicle. And, we do that with the government agency, the Ministry of Transportation. There's also independent bodies like JARI, Japan Automotive Research Institute, that works with us as an independent evaluator of the autonomous vehicle technology evaluation and so forth. And that's one of the advantages that we hope that we can bring to the relationship with Plus, is really understand that environment and the processes. It has not yet been established for autonomous trucking. Most of what I've described so far has been applied more to the rural, suburban, bus type deployments. But, we're already starting to work with the government on defining those unique requirements that we applied to the busing use case, the trucking use case as well.
Japan, I think, for decades now, is a country that is very forward-thinking in terms of innovation, in terms of technology. What has been the reception been like, from the consumer standpoint of these autonomous vehicles, just broadly? I mean, whether it's shuttles or, especially on the trucking side, if you've kind of heard what those conversations sound like. Are people more receptive because they've been so exposed to robots and, really high-tech factories and all of these things.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that the culture in Japan, the society is kind of used to this sort of advanced technology coming out. I think the other aspect of the culture is one around being very safe and conservative. So we do take the testing and validation of the system very safely, very seriously there, and ensure the safety before we put things into operation. I think there's a level of public trust there around that that we don't necessarily have in other countries, and I think that's one of the benefits that we have in working in Japan.
I think we're almost up on time now. So last question for you guys, which I think as with anything when we talk about technology development, there's always so when is it going to happen? When are we going to actually see these, on the road? What are you guys working together on next in terms of this partnership? So maybe start with CJ and then Shawn.
Yeah, so as we talked about before, the first phase of this deployment of autonomous trucks concluded now with the sort of base vehicle enablement and some data collection. And the next phase is going to be starting now, where we're really going to start to look at integrating of the AD technology into the vehicles and starting to conduct actual deployments and proof of concept testing on the expressway. And that's the part that we have to work closely with Klaus to bring the technology that you've already developed and validated in these types of platforms and apply it to the opportunity in Japan.
Shawn?
I think that's well said. I would just add that I think the critical thing here is it takes an ecosystem to bring this technology to market. So we're really excited to be collaborating with Tier 4 and a lot of the great partners and relationships they have established in Japan to bring this technology to market. Because as we talked about, I think this is something that will bring tremendous benefits in terms of safety, efficiency, and overall cost reductions.
Well, I think that will conclude our fireside chat here today. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Shawn, for joining us and talking a lot about what's going to be happening in Japan. We're excited to hear more, and hopefully next year at ACT, we get to talk about what's been done and the next leap forward in terms of the partnership.
Thank you. We look forward to it.
Thank you.